Welcome to ProutNews Weekly, where each week we explore important stories from around the world and consider what they can teach us about building a more just, decentralized, and compassionate society. Education is often described as the key to the future, but around the world it is being asked to do much more than prepare children for exams. Education can help communities recover from conflict, provide practical skills that lead to economic independence, and give young people opportunities that strengthen society as a whole. Yet, education is also under constant pressure. Governments struggle with budgets, teachers face increasing demands. Communities must decide what kind of education they want for the next generation. This week, we traveled to Colombia, Kenya, and Belgium, where three very different stories reveal why education remains one of society's most important investments. Our first story takes us to Guaviare, a department on the northern edge of Colombia's Amazon rainforest. For decades, Guaviare was known for civil conflict, coca production, illegal armed groups, and rapid deforestation. Many families survived by growing coca because few other economic opportunities existed. Roads, schools, and public services remained limited, and many young people saw little future beyond the violence that surrounded them. In a feature published by The Guardian, reporter Joe Parkin Daniels visited farming communities that are trying to build a different future. According to the article, many farmers are replacing coca fields with cacao plantations, fruit trees, and agroforestry systems that combine food production with forest conservation. Community organizations, agriculture advisors, and local developmental programs are teaching farmers new cultivation methods, helping them improve soil quality, diversify crops, and find legal markets for their products. One farmer explained that growing cacao is slower and requires more patience than coca, but it offers something his family never had before: a stable livelihood that does not depend on illegal markets. Others described how learning new farming techniques has allowed them to remain on their land while reducing pressure to clear additional forest. This article makes it clear that this transition is far from easy. Farmers still face insecurity, poor infrastructure, uncertain markets, and the continuing influence of armed groups. But many believe education and technical training are giving their communities new possibilities. This story is much more than about agriculture. It shows that education can become a tool for rebuilding society itself. Teaching sustainable farming practices, business skills, and environmental stewardship helps communities create alternatives to violence while protecting one of the world's most important ecosystems. One lesson from this story aligns closely with PROUT. Education should not simply prepare people to leave their communities in search of opportunity. It should also help them develop the knowledge and confidence to improve the places they already call home. Our second story comes from northwest Kenya, home to the Kakuma refugee camp and neighboring Kalabai settlement. Together, these communities host hundreds of thousands of refugees from South Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and several other countries. For many years, humanitarian assistance focused primarily on providing food, shelter, and emergency services. While those forms of support remain essential, they have often left refugees dependent on outside aid for long periods of time. Recent reporting on Kenya's Shirika plan describes a different approach. According to the article, the Kenyan government, working with international organizations, is shifting towards a greater integration between refugee settlements and nearby Kenyan communities. The goal is to help refugees become economically self-reliant while also creating opportunities for local residents. Education plays a central role in this effort. Schools are expanding vocational training programs in fields such as construction, tailoring, information technology, agriculture, and small business management. Young people are learning practical skills that can help them earn incomes rather than relying indefinitely on humanitarian assistance. These programs are designed to benefit host communities as well as refugees. Local businesses need skilled workers. Communities need teachers, health workers, technicians, and entrepreneurs. By investing in education and workforce development, The hope is that both refugees and local residents can participate in stronger regional economies. The challenges remain significant. Employment opportunities are still limited, infrastructure is stretched, and the international funding has declined. But the direction of the program represents an important shift from long term dependency toward long term opportunity. This story reminds us that education is closely connected to economic development. People become self reliant not simply because they receive financial assistance, but because they acquire the knowledge, practical skills, and confidence needed to build productive lives. PROUT places great importance on this relationship. Economic democracy depends upon educated citizens who are capable of contributing their talents to their own communities. When education develops practical skills alongside intellectual growth, it becomes one of the strongest foundations of local self reliance. Our final story takes us to Brussels, where thousands of teachers, university students, and labour union members gathered to protest proposed education reforms. Reuters reports that demonstrators opposed several measures introduced by the government of Belgium's French speaking community. Among the proposals were significant increases in university tuition, additional unpaid teaching hours for some secondary school teachers, and changes to employment protections within the education system. According to the article, protest organizers argued that these reforms would make higher education less affordable for students while placing greater pressure on teachers who are already working in schools facing staff shortages. Many demonstrators carried signs declaring that education should be viewed as an investment rather than a budget expense. Government officials defended the proposals, saying that they were necessary to reduce public spending and address growing budget deficits. They argued that financial reforms were needed to ensure the long term sustainability of public services. The demonstrations eventually led to confrontations between some of the protesters and police, drawing national attention to the debate over education funding. While the immediate issue concerns budgets and employment conditions, the discussion extends much further. Every society eventually decides what it values by where it invests its resources. Reducing education budgets may produce short term savings, but the long term consequences can be substantial. Higher tuition can discourage students from continuing their education. Greater workloads may make teaching a less attractive profession. Teacher shortages can reduce educational quality, and weaker educational systems ultimately affect innovation, economic productivity, and social mobility. One important lesson emerging from this story is that education should be evaluated over decades rather than annual budget cycles. Prout views education as one of the minimum necessities of life because developing human potential benefits the entire society. Investments in teachers, students, and schools are not simply expenditures, they are investments in the future capacity of a nation. Although these stories come from three very different parts of the world, they point towards a common conclusion. In Colombia, education is helping communities rebuild after decades of conflict. In Kenya, education is providing practical skills that can lead to greater self reliance and stronger local economies. In Belgium, the public debate reminds us that reducing investment in education may create costs that are felt for generations. Education is far more than what happens inside a classroom. It shapes how people solve problems, how communities develop, and how societies prepare for the future. Prout recognizes education as one of humanity's basic necessities because knowledge, practical skills, ethical values, and creativity all contribute to the well being of society. The stories may come from different countries, but they reveal a shared truth. When education flourishes, communities become more resilient, more self reliant, and better prepared to meet the challenges ahead. Thank you for joining us for ProutNews Weekly. We'll see you next week as we continue exploring the stories shaping our world through the lens of economic democracy, decentralization, and human centered development.